Hey everyone, welcome to the Sacred Souls podcast. I'm Mariel Heather, and today I'm in Sedona, Arizona with my best friend Danielle, and I'm so excited to have her here.
Hi everyone!
I've known her for, I would say, I think like 7.5 years almost, or 7 years, and she is an amazing human being, photographer, and most importantly, mother. And the reason why I wanted her to come on today is because I have been talking a lot about birth trauma and birth stories and just how to regulate our nervous system and just all of these different experiences that I learned about that stemmed from my mushroom journey. And I know that when I was talking about this, how I had a lot of trauma from being a C-section baby, I posted about this on TikTok and it went viral, and a lot of mothers were worrying, like, did they cause trauma to their child? And they were also basically shaming me for even being a C-section baby. And what I was trying to explain to them, and what other people were trying to explain in the comments, is that sometimes, well, most of the time, having a C-section isn't planned, and it shouldn't be something that you shame people for. But most importantly, I just really wanted to bring her on so she can talk about the birth experience from her point of view, because I've talked about it from like the baby's point of view, and I had my other friend who's a therapist on who talked about some birth trauma that she had, but we haven't actually talked to someone who went through it from the mother's point of view and what happens with the womb and all of that. So thank you for coming on and talking to us about that.
Yeah, no problem. Just to give everyone a backstory, my son is 3. He just turned 3 years old. He's so spirited, and I love him so much, and every day is a practice of being patient and connecting with him. So to give you a backstory behind me, I have 3 older sisters. So my eldest sister had 2 kids, and I witnessed her birth, and then my second oldest sister actually had me in the room photographing, and I got to witness one of her births. And I know that all 3 of her kids had an amazing experience. So my eldest sister, April, she ended up having a cesarean section twice. My second oldest ended up having 3 water births, the last one being the easiest, most amazing experience. And I know she was really hopeful that I would also get to experience a water birth. So being able to witness the water birth actually for my niece, it was life-changing for me. And so when I was going to have kids, I thought that most likely my experience might go in that direction, which is a water birth, a more natural birth. That sister, Colleen, she had a birth at a birthing center. So when I made my birth plan, I decided to try at a birthing center. And the birthing center in Australia where she lives is very different than the birth center here in Sedona, which was basically this just like little room in Cottonwood. And so part of my birth plan was to have it at a birth center so that I could be really close to the Cottonwood Hospital if anything were to happen. But I ended up having like a 3-day journey, so I ended up moving around a lot. So I was at the birth center, then I actually went home to try to have a home birth. Then I went back to the birth center and ended up in the Cottonwood Hospital for the eventually emergency C-section. And when people hear that I was in the birth journey for about 3 days, they assume that it was traumatic because that's what they hear again and again and again. But I actually never saw or experienced it as traumatic, so I think that was something unique. And one of the things, Mariel was drawn to bringing me on and talk about birth is because I never really saw it through a trauma lens.
And I think that's actually just really important, because that's what I'm trying to say. It's like not everyone experiences things the same, and so just because someone else had something traumatic happen to them doesn't mean that everyone is going to view it in that way. And even like with me, like I viewed something as being traumatic in the womb, but like other people didn't. And even when I told my parents about, when they were starting to tell me about my birth story, they even said that there was one point where like the umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck, and that's actually like why was a C-section baby. And it's just interesting because that's not even the trauma. That wasn't what traumatized me. Like, that's not even what I remember. But like, logically you might think, oh, that sounds traumatizing, like you're being choked, right? But that wasn't what I remembered. I remembered just the fact that I was being like taken out. So it's just, everyone remembers something different and everyone processes something different. And I just love how it's just so empowering and inspiring that it doesn't have to be like a traumatic experience, and that you kind of have this connection and embody that, you know, with your baby when you are going through like the birth portal.
Yeah.
So with all of that being said, why do you think you didn't see the birth process as traumatic? Like, did you prepare for it, or did you have certain rituals, or just like, can you walk us through that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I did a lot of thought and meditation, as we all do as moms when we're pregnant, and spending time with myself, talking over with coaches and other loved ones. Really, I came to the conclusion that if it was a healthy baby and a healthy mom, like that's the main goal. And I actually did sort of a reverse psychology. So it's like I knew I had some fear around having a cesarean, so having a surgery. I had some fear around having tears, because I know that that's happened. And so my coach did this practice with me, was like, okay, well, what's your worst case scenario? And so to me, the worst case scenario would be something's wrong with my baby or something's wrong with me. And so when you actually allow yourself to go down your fears and then like see what worst case scenario would be, for me it's like, okay, if a cesarean were to happen, like, how would you deal with it? And I thought about it, and I was like, oh, I'd have all the support I needed. So I've done surgery before. Like, I have a wonderful husband there to help me. The nurses will help me. You know, it's like something I can get through. So I think ahead of time, I kind of was like, what if worst case scenario happens? And mentally started going through like, oh, what's like, it's okay, you know? Because to me, the worst case scenario didn't happen. My baby came out and he was so healthy. I mean, my midwife even said this baby looks like it's 3 months old because he looked like a cherub. He was so healthy. So yes, he was almost a 10-pound baby. So the fact that he was so healthy, and then, you know, I went through the healing process. I was healthy. That was the ultimate goal. And although it was sad, it wasn't exactly what I wanted, or like a natural birth, or, you know, a water birth is what I really wanted. And it was just like, it was funny because the water was slowing down my birth every time I went in the water. So it's also just like this beautiful lesson in life and parenting, that things are not always going to go the way that you envision them going or have the intention of them going. And it's this beautiful dance of like, you have this other spirit that you're interacting with and connecting with, and things won't always go as planned, and it's like you have to be able to surrender to that journey, and just do the best you can with what you have. So.
Yeah, I love that you're saying that too, because it's kind of like a co-creative process, right? Because it is you and another being, so it's like it can't necessarily just be the way you want it, even though as much as like you intended and you wanted it, like you had the best intentions, but it's like there is another being involved, so sometimes it's like, all right, it's not going to go the way we want it to. But like you said, I think that's a really good attitude and metaphor for life, is that not everything goes as planned, even, you know, with birth itself, which is like such a huge thing.
Yeah, and just one thing to feed off of that was my friend who was there for me during the birth process was in touch with my midwife, and we kind of got to a point where I had been trying for 2 days, and my midwife was like, okay, pretty soon we're probably gonna make our way to the hospital. And I had this like beautiful moment where she came in and she was like, can you take a moment and channel, like, what do you think the baby has to say? And it was like a pivotal moment, because I did that, and I like took the time to go inside and to connect with my baby, you know, through this process of birth, and like really listen from this like heartfelt, intuitive space, and the baby had clearly said to me, I don't care where I'm born. I don't care how it happens. I'm just so excited to come and be a part of your family with you and Dad. It was like a very clear message he made that like this experience was not, it didn't matter how it happened. It was just getting here so that we could spend a lifetime together was the more important thing.
I love that.
And so like with that message, I stepped into the hospital. So his message to me, so connection, is what helped me surrender more and more as the journey kept going. Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting you said earlier that you had a coach. I don't know if a lot of people do have birth coaches, but do you recommend that for other people?
So my coach was not a birth coach.
Oh, okay.
But I did have a doula. And I actually had like all the coaches, I guess you could say. The one who took me down that path was actually my life coach. So she kind of helps with overall mental health, physical health, and like business health, like life balance health. But I also had a doula, and I also had a midwife, and I also took a hypnobirthing class. So yes, I mean, I think one of the things Mariel and I have talked about is that I love to learn. I love to learn, and I love to learn at the different stages, whether it's birth or newborn or toddler, and I'm always trying to like listen to the different audiobooks and guides that are out there, and then of course come to my own conclusion and do this mix of like listening to others and listening to what's right for me and my child.
Yeah, because I feel like the more knowledge you have, the more you can feel empowered to make the right decision that's best for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I did post about the C-section trauma on TikTok, a lot of women expressed that they felt a lot of shame for having a C-section. And I'm just wondering, since you didn't feel any shame, which is amazing, if you have any advice for those moms out there where they can maybe reframe something or just maybe not be so hard on themselves or maybe have some compassion. Is there anything that you could share or help them with?
I love this question because I definitely experienced a lot of shame and it wasn't from myself. So that's what it was so fascinating because I had this birth, I had this experience. I was in my own little cocoon with me and Alistair and Callio, and those first few days, I didn't even see it as trauma. I mean, I knew I had to heal from a surgery. I've had 3 knee surgeries, so I know the process of healing from a surgery and how much help you need. But it actually wasn't until I talked to a few different sources, and I'm not going to name who they are, that I just didn't question my birth until I talked to a few people, and it was really interesting. One person was just so devastated for me. Like, she even said that, oh, I'm so devastated for you. And I was like, oh, what? Am I supposed to feel devastated? It was just like, I was like, oh. Like, it was like, and then I started to, feel sad because someone else projected their own beliefs on me of like, oh, I'm so sorry. I feel so devastated for you. I'm sorry you had to go through such a long birth. And like, let me tell you, that birth was long, but it had beautiful moments. And it wasn't like I was in pain the whole time. I had like hours of sleep and stuff like that. So my experience was so sacred, and my favorite part was being at home. I loved being at home. And if I have another one, I'd really like a chance to birth at home for as long as possible. Still keeping the open mind that a hospital might be the setting that I end up going to. But it was until, and then another person, another source was like, oh, well, I know you could have done it, naturally. And it's, next time you can do this, this, and this, and this. And it's like, do you know? Do you know what was happening that day? And like, could you have really changed the result? I don't know, but it felt horrible because it was like that person's like, oh, you didn't do it right. It felt like that's what they were saying, like, oh, you could have done it right. And it's like, there's really no right or wrong. And I think like going back to myself and going back to my belief and going back to the feelings I had, which were actually not disappointment, it was more like gratitude that my baby was there, gratitude for all the support, gratitude, that even the surgery, the first few weeks, healed faster than I ever imagined. My knee surgeries took 6 months. So I was like, what? This heals in 2 weeks? Like,
yeah, it's like a breeze.
It blew my mind, and I was like, oh, this is way easier than I ever thought. And like, it's not easy pain-wise. I'm not gonna lie, like C-section pain, the abdominal, but when you have a baby in your arms, you're getting so many wonderful endorphins. And I would say we all have our journeys as moms, and we all have our places that maybe didn't go exactly how we thought. And for me, even though I didn't have a C-section, I ended up with this beautiful baby who nursed, and nursing was so easy for me. And I can't even tell you how many moms I've talked to where nursing was the hardest thing. They had a perfect birth story, and then their baby cannot nurse, and they're going through hell the first like 3 months because their baby cannot nurse. And Alistair came out as a C-section and then was like, I got this, and just like latched on. And I was like, thank you, Mom. And there was this beautiful story too from Callio, who got to hold Alistair first.
Who's your husband?
Yeah, Callio is my husband. He got to, the doctors had to hold him, then Callio, and then Callio brought him into the room to me, and they woke me up as soon as they could. And Callio said he recognized exactly who I was and wanted to be with me exactly the moment that he was in the room. And like, I actually was still waking up because I had to be put under. And Alistair, without needing any of my help, they just laid him down, and he latched himself and just like cuddled up with me. Like, it was like he took the initiative and really connected that first time. And connection has been like a huge thing that Mariel and I have talked about.
So I feel like, tell me if I'm right with this, your advice is basically to not compare yourself to other people's journeys, right? And to focus more on like what did happen, like quote unquote right, or like the way you wanted it to, rather than what it didn't. You know, like you're saying your baby is healthy or you're happy, and you know, like you like just don't focus on the negatives
like
of
what
that.
really
and
matters.
Be so hard on yourself.
Yeah, the things that are really important. And in the end, it's like, for me, what was really important was the healthiness of my baby and me, and less so, you know, and this is a sad story, but in the same circle of people who went to my hypnobirthing, one person would not give up on a natural birth and birth longer than 3 days. Her story was longer. And I haven't talked to her too much, but I did hear that she had a stillbirth. So to me, I would rather have a C-section any day. I'd rather have a planned C-section than a stillbirth. Like, that is not an option to me. And that's one of the reasons why I'm proud that I made the decision to go to the hospital. And I'm proud that, you know, it ended up happening the way it did. It's because, like, he's this wonderful child that I get to connect to for the rest of my life, who's physically here.
And it's just crazy, like, all the different perspectives that you're saying, because growing up, I was under the impression, like, I don't know who told me this, but I was told that having a C-section is actually better. And so I literally, and I didn't give it much thought, like, I was just like, okay. And I mean, it wasn't planned, but that's just what someone told me. Yeah. So this whole time I thought, like, no problem. And then I have the mushroom journey, and I find out that it causes trauma sometimes, or that some people don't want it. And so it was like this whole other, you know, perspective that I had no idea about. And so I think it's just also too, like, when maybe, and you, like, let me know if you agree with this, but like, if you're a mom and you have, you know, a C-section or however way you give birth, it's like maybe only tell the people that support you and that are like so close to you, because everyone obviously has their own opinion. And especially when you are going through something so vulnerable, it's like you don't need that negativity and like all those different perspectives right afterwards.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes they come from unexpected sources. I would say the two people who had commentary, I did not expect them to say those comments that made me feel that way. But it was nice because it was like you said, you do have like this, you do get to choose, and the sister who had the C-section, I connected with her so deeply, and she was there for me, and she was just like, I know what it's like, I know how shaming it can feel, because it depends, like you said. So like, you could be shamed for being like a natural birth person, or you could be shamed for having a C-section because you didn't have a natural birth. I think it could go both ways.
Definitely.
And as moms, we're just trying to do the best we can. And if, I did read books about the importance of the baby going through the canal and having certain hormones that they get through doing that. And the squeezing of the head also does a lot of things. So I was a little concerned about that, and him and his experience as well, because I did read all the books, and some of them were hypnobirthing and talked about the importance of a natural birth. But one of the things that Mariel and I have discussed a little bit was just like, how do you, see Alistair now? Like, does he have issues from it? I think you've asked me that before, right? And it's like, it's hard for me to know, but I think what I have to do is just keep believing that with connecting with him again and again and feeling that connection and trying to be the best parent that I could possibly be, that he has this opportunity to heal from it. Or, also, I don't know. Like Mariel said, I don't know if he has trauma from it or not.
I don't think he does. I mean, because like you're mentioning with connection, even with relationships, there's like certain cycles. And if you have a conflict with someone, like whether it's romantic, business, friendship, it's all about how you reconnect with the person. And that's what matters most in the cycle. So I think when it comes to, birth trauma or any trauma that a child has, it's more like, okay, what are you doing afterwards? And I think you have done like all of the right things. Not that there's like right way, but I mean, you're so nurturing. And again, with that theme of connection, like you are so connected to him that I feel like that's what heals the trauma, if there is any.
Yeah. And the connection thing, it's one of those things that every stage of their life they need to be connected to and seen different. A newborn is different than a toddler. A newborn is different than the connection you might have when they're in your belly. So it's each phase you have to connect in different ways. And it's nice because there actually are experts out there. I loved The Happiest Baby on the Block. I love The Happiest Toddler on the Block. Those are amazing books you can listen to. I took a course called Taking Care of Babies. Her name is Kara, so it's cute. So stuff like that where they actually teach you, like, we're all new parents and sometimes it's very overwhelming and we actually don't even want to connect. We want to disconnect because it's so much responsibility. But I think having a little bit of extra help from someone who has helped a lot of moms, they can actually teach you like tricks to connect with your little one if like you're scared, of like, well, what if I don't know how to connect? It's like, oh, there's lots of sources that can help you.
Yeah, I think that's important. It's like even if you are like a single parent and you are in it like alone, there's still resources and books and different people that you can talk to and listen to that can give you advice.
Oh yeah, and on the subject of connection too, like don't place all the weight on yourself as a mom. Really, the baby should be connecting with a tribe, and something that helps my heart feel better is like it's also up to my husband Callio, and he's really filled in the gaps when I am having trouble with the connection, whether it's like holding him in his first moments or being the one to hold him and shush him as a newborn. He's really stepped in. And if you don't have that source, like grandparents, and if you don't have that source, there are actually paid nannies and people you can hire. And like one of Alistair's best connections right now is his babysitter, and he loves her. Like he can't wait to hang out with her. So it's like really those connections should be built not just with mom and not just with dad, but like with several people. So mom's probably usually the number one connection where they feel safe, but it's really important to have it in so many different ways.
Yeah, and also too, I mean, just something that I did learn, which might be common sense, but this is what I learned in my mushroom journey, is that the relationship with your mom, is your first relationship that you have, and it is like the most important at, the first one. So I just feel like even if someone is alone, like as long as it's like they have you, like that's like first, that's what matters most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we're not all perfect, so it's also a journey.
Yeah, exactly.
Learning how to connect. So, I mean, you just do the best you can.
Exactly. So do you have any last, like one piece of advice for moms with their birth journey?
My advice would be to find the deep connection between the mother and the baby, so between you and your baby. When you're choosing your birth journey, just try to reconnect and surrender to the birth journey too. And then throughout parenthood, finding those reconnection points. I think that really just helps heal. Yep.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I think too, like now that I'm seeing how important like it is your first memory and just the first energy of you coming into the world, it's like if you are coming in with your mom, being in a state of surrender and flow as much as you can. I mean, I know it's sometimes easier said than done. I think that's also just really helpful for everyone involved.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, I was able to go in a state of flow, whereas I don't know if you've been able to talk to your mom or what that's like, but hers might have been more surprising or more jarring. Yeah. Every birth story is different.
Definitely. Yeah, and so maybe everyone can just like own their own unique story, not be so hard on themselves, don't compare.
Yes.
Don't listen to everyone else because everyone will have an opinion.
Yes.
And
like you do your own research and you see what resonates with you.
And if it doesn't go as planned, it's to just trust in that process because like you said with life, not everything goes to plan, so to just not be so hard on yourself or to think like you did it wrong or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a life skill you're teaching your child too, is the connection after the experience. Whether it's like, the experience could be them tantruming and you losing your cool, and then afterwards you reconnect and say, I'm sorry I got angry. That really wasn't nice of mommy to raise her voice like that. And then, like, I've done that with my son, and he goes, yeah. So it's so cute. He goes, yeah. And then we have this moment of reconnection, and he often gives me, like, a hug and a kiss. And it's, like, so sweet. And it's, like, here's this big birth story, but then it's, like, really the main thing is, like, all the connecting points that happen afterwards.
And that's what I'm saying. I think the reconnection part is so important. So, like, even if something bad happened or like, there was a tantrum or just anything big or small, it's like how you reconnect, I think matters more than what happened.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story. It's so beautiful and I know that so many people are going to benefit from it. So thank you guys for listening or watching, and I will see you guys in the next episode.